The day of reckoning is upon us. It is NBA trade deadline day. Will the Memphis Grizzlies look vastly different in several hours? Will they look roughly the same? Will they maybe make a minor move? All options are on the table. Let Damichael Cole and I take you through them all here on this special edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to another installment of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for checking us out. However you're listening, watching on YouTube, liking, commenting, hopefully. The comments have been live on YouTube. Thank you for that. Keep that coming, please, please, please. Thank you so much for listening on any aspect of where you get podcasts, as we are a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, joined by my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole. And before I spend the proper amount of time complimenting him, I want to remind you all that this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. I am joined by the Grizzlies beat writer for the commercial appeal there in Memphis, the handsome, the charming, the debonair, the brilliant, all those things. Happy to be rejoined by my friend, Damichael Cole. Damichael, how are you doing on this trade deadline day? Happy trade deadline.
Deadline, Joe. This is that time of year. I was thinking of it earlier, and it's almost like Christmas in a way, but it's like you want this big gift, right? Mm-hmm. And you've told your parents all year, I want this, mom, I want this, dad, I want this, mom. And you see this big present under there, and it's boom or bust, right? It's that one gift you want, or if it's not that, you gotta, oh yeah, I'm happy, yeah, thank you. But in reality, you're upset deep down inside, right? I remember last season, people were, are they gonna make a move? Are they gonna make a move? No move made, but the team was a little bit younger. No one, I think, expected 56 wins. Now they're bloodthirsty. They're hungry, Joe. They want, 56 wins is cool. We've been there, done that. Mm-hmm. Been there, done that. Like, it's time to cash in. That's what it is, right?
Is it time to cash in, though? That is the question. And the only people that know the answer to that are in the Grizzlies front office, led by Zach Kleiman and company. So on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to break it down for you. In mine and Damichael's mind, there's three options that the Memphis Grizzlies have going into the trade deadline. They could go all in, which we're going to lead off with in a moment, because that's the most interesting option, at least in my opinion, whatever the definition of all in is for the Grizzlies at this time. Then we'll talk about how they could make a minor move. We've talked about that a little bit in the past, but obviously that calculus has now changed as we record this episode. The Lakers, Timberwolves, Jazz trade has been finalized. Guys like Malik Beasley, I know Damichael Cole might weep a little bit later on in the show. Beasley's no longer an option. He's now he's a Laker. He's a Laker, Damichael. I know. We're going to work through it together, buddy. I got you. So that will be later on. And then towards the end of the show, we're going to talk about what might be most likely at this stage. But again, nobody really knows. The Grizzlies just standing pat, not really doing anything like they've done the last several trade deadlines. The last time they made a major in-season move was in 2020 before the world caught on fire with COVID-19 when they acquired Justice Winslow. So let's start with the big move. And the Grizzlies continue to be, I think Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports is the one who most recently reported about this extensively. Yeah. Maybe the first one that reported about it kind of extensively. I know Mark Stein and his Substack has talked about it as well. So kudos to those two guys. The Grizzlies get connected to OG Anunoby a lot, Damichael. And I don't know if it's because no team arguably needs OG Anunoby more than the Grizzlies, but it's feeling like a where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, even though in my opinion, and you've been around this more professionally than I have, every single leak seems like it's coming from the Raptors, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the sense that I'm getting. In I think in terms of you have a few teams where like there are a little more cracks in the ceiling, from their side, and the Raptors have kind of been one of those teams. I would think the Nets, as we saw recently, they kind of going to make it hard for other teams to want to even work with them after what they did to the Suns. Kind of putting their trade offer out there and other teams. So that was some dangerous business. But yeah, I think that's where we are. The Raptors are definitely probably the side that's light to these deals.
I would imagine so. And with that in mind, the leaks have been that the teams that have reached out to the Raptors, Memphis being one of them, they're willing to part with 2 first-round picks. Toronto thinks they can get to 3. And again, that's where that negotiating ploy kind of comes into play. Will Memphis be the team that's willing to up the spending cost to go to 3 first-round picks to secure the services of OG Anunoby? I think that's worth watching and playing out. It's on the table. That is an option. And I think that there's enough reason for it to make sense and enough smoke in terms of reports that that's still possible, right? Like I'm not throwing that away. For me personally, Damichael, and there are no reports that this is likely, right? Chicago, we saw them on Tuesday night. Didn't go well for the Bulls against the Grizzlies. Memphis held them to 89 points, which was pretty impressive. Jaren Jackson Jr. was a monster. The point I'm trying to make is DeMar DeRozan didn't play in that game. And he did play against the Spurs, I believe. So second night of a back-to-back, you can make that argument for a veteran player. I thought it was kind of interesting that DeMar didn't play. And I kind of floated the idea of this veteran wing who's not a three-point threat, not saying he is, but he's one of the best 30 or so players in the NBA without a three-point shot. That tells you he's pretty darn good at a lot of other things in terms of offensive basketball in particular. OG Anunoby is the most likely, if the Grizzlies go all in, target. I wouldn't hate DeMar DeRozan on this team. You talk about a guy that can help your half-court offense immediately. And as you and I have talked about recently, Damichael, this team needs veteran leadership. DeMar DeRozan would bring that to this roster and do so in spades.
Yeah, you talk about big fish, right? This is the best mid-range shooter in the NBA. If he's not the best to you, he definitely gets up the most in terms of quantity at high efficiency as well. And we talk about the half-court offense issues. He would fix them. Simple. He will fix your half-court offense issues just like that. But here's the thing, Joe. Where are the Bulls right now? How do they figure in this buyer-seller report out there right now indicating that the Bulls, Westbrook gets a buyout from the Utah Jazz, and that's a trade, that we kind of, briefly mentioned earlier. The Lakers traded Russell Westbrook in a 3-team deal, and we'll go over all the details of the trade. But right now, we're focusing on the fact that Russell Westbrook lands in Utah. Utah, as you can see, is a seller in this trade market, so he's probably going to be bought out. And the reports are indicating that teams interested in getting a Russell. So with that being the case, it makes me feel like, hey, they think if they can fix their point guard issues up, they can make a late run at this thing, which would mean they would want to retain DeMar DeRozan. So I think that's where we are. But I tell you what, if, the deals are good enough, because the Bulls are by no means a finished product, DeMar DeRozan would fix a lot of the issues in Memphis from an offensive standpoint.
Yes, he would. I'm interested in that Chicago report because to me, the Clippers are interested too in Westbrook. And if the Clippers are interested in Westbrook, that makes the most sense.
It makes the most sense. You don't got to move.
You don't even have to move. Nothing changes for him. He still goes to the same freaking place to work. He just goes to the other side of the building or the other locker room that is provided there. And I'm always going to call it Staples Center. I know it's not Staples. It's like crypto.com or some nonsense. It's always going to be Staples Center to me. I'm with you on that. I think if they go all in, and again, that's a big if with this front office. OG Anunoby is the most likely target. DeMar DeRozan is a dark horse. I think it was Sports Betting is the website that has DeMar DeRozan. Now that the Lakers have made their trade, I don't think DeRozan's in their plans. Maybe the Grizzlies are now the favorite by betting odds. Again, betting is different. But usually when there's logic that's applied to these numbers, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for Memphis when it comes to going all in.
And
they also can go ahead.
We should also mention, this KD guy that everyone, keeps talking about.
That's true.
And but clearly our stance, I think, is pretty similar, being the fact that we're 10 minutes into the show right now and we have not mentioned Kevin Durant yet. I think that's basically us saying, look, don't get your hopes up on this one. I've seen you and try to, wiggle around with this KD thing. Me, I'm more straightforward with this one. It's simple. In Memphis, you don't want to give up Bane or Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah.
If you're the Nets, why in the world would you take a deal from the Grizzlies without Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the deal? Either or, I mean. So I feel like that's a deal that's almost impossible to make from the Grizzlies. Before the season, when the Raptors had the wrong interest, a guy like Scotty Barnes was going to be involved. With the Suns, they were talking about swinging it, with DeAndre Ayton, a guy like Mikal Bridges, and those high-end type of players there. It's Zaire Williams, and no offense to these guys, but it's not going to cut. And that's why I don't really, put a lot into the KD stuff. If people won't, and that's the main or Jared, if that's the deal. And Chris, as you can tell, by the stance of this front office so far.
Right. No, you're exactly right about that. So it's probably OG Anunoby, maybe less likely DeMar DeRozan if they go all in. Coming up next, we'll talk about the next tier down. Maybe they just want to dip their toes in the trade waters. What are some possibilities for the Grizzlies on this trade deadline day? But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner at Locked On. They are the #1 sportsbook in America. They are FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because they have a lot of great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. You can download FanDuel right now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 this Sunday with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Moneyline, point spreads, who scores a touchdown, everything in between. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Medium-sized trades. Dipping our toe in the water, seeing if we like how it feels. We'll check it out next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, joined by my fellow host, Damichael Cole. The technical term is co-host. Looking good there, Damichael. And we talked about DeMar DeRozan and OG Anunoby. Those are the realistic, in air quotes for those listening podcast-wise, options for Memphis. Now we're dipping our toe in the water just a little bit. We're seeing if it's warm enough. We're not making a big splash, but we are interested in trying to improve the roster in some way. So we've talked about this pretty extensively, I think, Damichael. We don't have to go too deep down this well. My personal favorites in this option are Alex Caruso, who, again, we've talked about a lot, and, Josh Richardson would be another one from the Spurs, who I know you brought up on a recent episode, and you kind of won me over in terms of his 3-and-D ability to do a little bit of both on both ends. I think that those guys, if Memphis just wanted to shore up the end of their rotation, those would be the guys to bring in. But somebody on Twitter, and I wish I had it in front of me so that I could give them credit, I pointed out in a recent post over at my Substack, Written in the Dark, now over 100 subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for checking out Written in the Dark. One of my readers, or in the article, I pointed out the front office essentially admitting they made a mistake trading DeAnthony Melton if they went out and acquired Caruso, because they're basically the same guy, right? Except Caruso's a little lighter on the usage. But in terms of being a decent three-point shooter, really strong defender, creator of those blessed stocks, those steals and blocks, Caruso and Melton are roughly the same. So acquiring an end-of-the-rotation guy would basically be admitting that you made a mistake in trading away Melton. And somebody said, I don't think this front office has the humility, essentially. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that was the vibe of the comment. I'm not sure they're willing to admit that they were wrong. Maybe they weren't wrong, but again, if you look at their wings, no offense to Danny Green, who essentially looked like he was getting cardio against the Bulls. Same thing with John Conchar. They don't have a eighth man wing right now. They have Tyus Jones and Brandon Clark who can play off the bench. There's not much else there. So they have to do something, at least in theory, right? This feels likely to me, doesn't it to you? Maybe I'm crazy, Damichael, but they can't go into the playoffs with John Conchar as their eighth man, can they?
They can't.
I guess they can, but they shouldn't.
Not if they want to win.
Right.
You know how I feel about this. Malik Beasley, man, he is the guy who I felt you don't have to tell that guy to shoot the ball.
Right.
He can start. We've seen him start, average 20 points as a starter in spurts before. We've seen him come off the bench for really good teams. You know, the Timberwolves last season, big piece for the Jazz. This season, pre-trade, he was involved in that 3-team trade, and he's headed to the Lakers, where they need shooting, and you're gonna see a guy like that because he's gonna pay dividends. He was the guy who I thought, would fit this medium splash type of guy, but a couple other guys do as well, and one for me is Eric Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Gordon, I personally, I know his defensive numbers don't stand out at all, but there's a mental thing to this as well, and there's an eye test component, Joe, that I like to factor in. And with those two things, when it comes to Eric Gordon, the mental side of it is I'm playing with a bunch of guys who can't play defense. The only one who can play defense. I feel like
he's been on a bad team for a long time now. Exactly.
And you get sick of it, especially the way he came into this league playing, a lot of winning basketball, especially with those Rocket teams, in the mid-2000s with James Harden and the crew. But that's one part of it, right? Then there's the other part of it, where I talk about the eye test. I've seen him, stand in front of LeBron James and make LeBron work really hard for shots. And look at the way he's built. It's funny. Desmond Bane has told me this is a guy he watches a little bit. People kind of compared Desmond Bane to Eric Gordon earlier, in his draft process. And you can see the similarities. Low to the ground, the shooting profile. You can see the similarities there. But I think Eric Gordon, he's a guy who can score the basketball. When Jalen Green and Kevin Porter games, look at the numbers he's been putting up for the Rockets. But there's some playmaking as well, Joe. There's playmaking potential where we didn't see much of that when he played with James Harden and Chris Paul and those guys, because it was a lot of just three-point shots. But I like what he brings to the table. I think this is your guy. You say, hey, you want someone who's going to come off the bench, average double figures, and really boost that scoring, and potentially even, be in a closing lineup and give you that option, alongside Ja crew. I think he can really help this.
If you are unsure about what Zaire Williams is moving forward, I think that you can probably get Eric Gordon with a trade of Danny Green, Zaire Williams, and maybe a couple second-round picks. I don't know that the Rockets are super excited about how he talks about, there's no improvement.
Yeah,
he's very open and honest about his perspective on where the Houston Rockets are at. I'm not sold that they're happy with that, obviously. And I think that there is an opening there for a team to slide in and get a productive player. Like you said, if you can keep Dylan Brooks, who is very polarizing at this point, he's booed in his own home arena, which, Nick Calathis says hello. That's not something that's new among Grizzlies fans. And if you're new to Grizzlies fandom, trust me, Nick Calathis, once upon a time, played for the Grizzlies. Look him up. He actually wasn't bad. If you liked Anthony Melton, you'll probably like Nick Calathis, but I digress. I think that for me, the thing that's interesting about Gordon, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, I was concerned about his money. I think he makes $19 million this season, trying to make the salaries match. Zaire and Danny fit. So that would be interesting to me. The Houston Rockets are still in young talent acquisition mode. Zaire is a young talent. You develop him. He could be a guy that fits for you long-term. You don't plan on having Eric Gordon long-term. Danny Green can be a veteran presence and then walk in free agency, or you buy Danny Green out. and he gets to go and pick the Bucks or the Sixers or the Celtics, some team that he wants to go contend with, somewhere that has warmer weather, perhaps. I think that there's a lot of interesting pieces. The Eric Gordon one is intriguing to me. I think that you've won me over there as well. So, Eric Gordon, Alex Caruso, theoretically, you could get both of those guys. And now you're looking at a Tyus Jones, Alex Caruso, Eric Gordon, Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama kind of thing. And your bench at the end of it, at least, looks a lot better than it did. So I'm curious to see if they dip that toe, if they dabble at the trade deadline. We're going to finish up here on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies talking about maybe Occam's razor's answer to what the Grizzlies are going to do. But first, obviously, the trade deadline is fast approaching. Locked On has you covered. Today, Thursday, February 9th, you can tune into Locked On NBA and YouTube. 2 p.m. Eastern time is where we're getting started, hearing reaction from the trades that will change the rest of the NBA season, who becomes contenders, who is tanking for a better future. Subscribe to the Locked On NBA channel on YouTube. Don't miss a deal. Don't miss a conversation. If the Grizzlies make a move, I will be representing us over at Locked On Grizzlies. I'll hop on with the guys over at Locked On NBA, and we'll talk through whatever the craziness is. But I'm still not convinced they make a move. I've been on that train this entire time. I fell to the caboose a little bit towards this last week or so because I love the trade machine so much. But when we come back on Locked On Grizzlies, Damichael and I will talk about the third option, the stationary one. Stick around. You're on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. We're finishing up this trade deadline episode. So need to get some audio effects here. I'm Joe Mullinax, joined by my wonderful co-host, the fantastic Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. We've talked about big moves, OG Anunoby, DeMar DeRozan. We've talked about medium-sized moves, Eric Gordon, Alex Caruso, Josh Richardson. Now this is the one that's the least fun, right? This is the one that is, like I said, Occam's razor. The most likely scenario is the simplest one. And the easiest thing for the Memphis Grizzlies to do at this trade deadline is nothing. That's the easiest thing for them to do, is to stand pat. And there are arguments for this, Damichael, even though they have, I guess it's lost 8 of their last 10. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games now. They are one of the youngest teams in the NBA. They easily have the best record among those youngest teams in the NBA. It's not particularly close. They have three star level players, Ja Morant being a superstar. Jaren Jackson Jr., if he plays the way he did against the Bulls, he's a superstar. And then you've got Desmond Bane, who shows those flashes of all-star level play as well. They're all younger than 25 years old. Your window, in theory, is not open right now. So does a OG Anunoby open that window wider? Maybe, in terms of being a part of that core moving forward. Does DeMar DeRozan open that window wider this season? Yes, in my opinion, he does. But again, you're going all in for this season, maybe next season too, and you're looking at the true primes of Ja, Dez, and Jaren having less resources to build around them. So maybe the Anunoby trade makes more sense from that perspective. You have a core 4 now instead of a big 3.
Yeah,
I am still kind of coming back to the idea that this front office has yet to make a move like this. I think that the Anunoby situation is going to be fascinating. Will they move up to the 3 firsts that the Raptors want? Because the Raptors are sitting in a position of strength, in my opinion. They don't need to do jack squat. All these players that they've got, they have under contract, or they are able to move a guy for resources that isn't Anunoby. Like they can move Fred VanVleet fairly easily. And they're in a spot like Gary Trent Jr. is another one that can be moved much more easily than Anunoby. They could add to their own future picks. You mentioned Kevin Durant. In a theoretical Kevin Durant trade, who would the Nets want? Probably number 1 is Pascal Siakam. Number 2 is OG Anunoby. So the Raptors dealings might just got a little more muddy with the possibility of a KD trade over the summer. KD was open to a Phoenix trade, according to Woj over at ESPN. So maybe that makes Toronto a little bit more nervous. Maybe it's just a matter of time until the Suns and KD get together. So with all this uncertainty, with the fact that Memphis is still so young and they're still overachieving compared to that age, I keep coming back to this feeling in my gut that even though in the short term for this season, it's not the right decision, in my opinion, they more than likely will just do nothing at this deadline, Damichael, potentially. Again, we're recording this and you might listen at 9 a.m. on YouTube and they made a trade overnight. But sitting here as we record, they don't need to make a trade themselves. They don't need to.
I completely agree. And here's my perspective. In the simplest form, you look at it like this. When you get to the postseason, everyone's shortening the roster. You're not going to play 10 guys a lot of times. A couple postseasons ago when they played the Jazz, but they kind of started to shorten things a little bit, this past season. So let's say we've already said this 1,000 times. We know who the primary 8 guys are. They're your 5 starters, Tyus Jones, BC, and Santi Aldama. Those 8 are going to play no matter who you're playing. I think Dan Green is a suitable guy as he continues to catch wind, as he continues to get reps. I wasn't bothered about the 0.0 rebounds the other day. You want to know why, Joe? Because of that first game, he got his shots up. In that second game, he didn't get as many up, but he got them up again. Made 2 3-pointers. He's more, from what I'm noticing, 1, he's readjusting to the speed of the game. 2, he's going to take his shots when he can get them. Open, Eddie Green's not going to pass them up. There are years and years and years of tape that prove this. So I think that's a suitable night guy. Danny Green is your night guy. I don't think there's a team in the league that would go wrong, with that option. Solid defense, quality 3-point shooting. Sounds like a decent option to me. We already know how the Grizzlies like to play their rotations. At the end of the day, Ja will go off Steven Adams will stay on the floor together. It's usually Ja, Steven Adams, Dylan. That's your core of those guys together. You keep Ja's great offense on the floor. You get Steven Adams' offensive rebounding, Dylan Brooks' wing and perimeter defense. They like to kind of run 2 units. When you take Ja off the floor, you want to have Desmond Bane's offense on the floor. But you also want to have Jaren's defense on the floor when Dylan Brooks goes off the floor. So they stagger these things perfectly, right? And Danny Green, the merger, 12 of those units. And again, you have your top 8 guy who can just, play a solid role. And I think he can do that. So in the end, the Grizzlies might not have the best 10. They might not have the best 11 in case of an injury. But their 8 or 9 would be pretty much, what we've seen over the course of the last couple years. And I think it's a good enough 9 if they're executing at a high level.
Their ability to convince themselves of that is what's going to make a trade not happen. I hear you. I think you're right in terms of that's going to be their perspective. They can still be the 2 seed. They can still be a team that has a home court advantage series in the playoffs, even if they fall off a little bit, even if they fall to 3 or 4. The way they are currently constructed, they are one of the top 5 or so teams in the National Basketball Association. Why disrupt that for a chance to try to open the window right now when the window is plenty open for the next 6 or 7 years, plus all these assets they have to continue to add young talent around this eventually aging core? The only thing that I'm going to say is if they go this route, I won't be surprised, but I will be disappointed because I think that they have an opportunity right now in a Western Conference that is pretty wide open. This is a moment where, as a young team, they could take advantage and secure themselves for a date, essentially, with the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. And you see what happens. You see what goes, right? You roll out the ball, you lose to Denver in 6 or 7, tip your cap.
I think you're right.
I'm not sure in a 7-game series right now, with the way that the Grizzlies are constructed, I would take them over the Clippers. I'm not sure I would take them over the Warriors. After this Lakers trade, I'm not sure I would take them over the Lakers. And that is the point. That is the point. You have teams like the Lakers who have, when they are healthy, 2 of the best 10 players on the planet, and Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They just got decent help. Okay. They are making moves to try to be better now. The Grizzlies are much better in terms of record than the Lakers, and they may not make such moves to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. The fan base trusts this front office, but with everything, there's a line, there's a limit. I think that they're closer to that than they may realize. And maybe they do understand that because of the OG Anunoby rumors, right? Maybe they do understand that, okay, this is a time where we solidify ourselves. We have a Ja, Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Anunoby core four because I think Anunoby's 24, 25. For the next 5 or 6 years, they pay these dudes and they're going to be pretty darn good. That makes sense. But to do nothing and to go into it saying, given what we've seen so far from Danny Green, to say, all right, here we go. Let's do the best we can. I think that's the fan base, if it fails, will do a pretty strong turn on this front office, warranted or unwarranted.
And if I must add, I see point entirely, because at the end, I try to think of it from the Grizzlies, side of things, just talking to those people and,
Sure.
Get an idea for how they think. If I'm the GM, sure, I'm looking at it like this. Off the bench right now, I don't have that guy who I can say, oh, go be that offensive, instant 12 points in 6 minutes, 2 to 3 3-pointers. As a guy we mentioned, Locked On Grizzlies, that type of guy. We don't have that type of guy. Going into the postseason without that is risky. You look at the Celtics, and they have a Malcolm Brogdon who could come in and light things up. You look at the Warriors, they have a Jordan Poole who can come in and light things up. The Clippers have a plethora with Norval, who always steps into the starting lineup and averages 20 points, per game. So the Grizzlies don't have that. Tyus Jones has been, 18, 19, 20 points per game as a starter, this season. But we know Tyus Jones has limitations as a shot creator. With Tyus Jones, for the most part, you're going to see spot up 3-pointers, 3-pointers off of screens, and you're going to see floaters. You're going to see a lot of attack traffic, finish attack type flips and get to the mid-range and fadeaway jumpers and all that. You're not going to see that. That's just not his game. There are limits to the way he scores the basketball, and that matters more in the half court. That's why I'm talking about it, because sure, he's going to be, he's great offense throughout the game, and he's a great distributor, right? Tyus Jones you just can't get a better backup point guard probably in the NBA right now. But I agree. You need that instant offense. You not just some guy who's going to, like Danny Green, who's going to just give you, 3-pointers in spurts from time to time. You need that Alec Burks, type of guy, that Jamal Crawford, in theory, the Lou Williams in theory, those type of players who can come in and change the game when the starters are struggling offensively. So if they make that type of move, it'll show me that there's more seriousness to kind of doing this thing right now, because we talked about Zion Williams, who recently just got recalled back up. Down, and Taylor Jenkins basically told us that there was an unclear timeline on when he'll be back. So all things considered, there's some uncertainty on the wing position, and we'll see how they address it.
You don't want to trade for a G League player, Damichael. Come on now. That's why they called him back up. No, I'm just kidding. The Grizzlies are the most fascinating team, in my opinion, at the trade deadline, and obviously I'm biased. They could literally do any of these three things. They could go all in. They could do a middle-of-the-road move. They could do nothing. We literally do not know. The Lakers were always going to try to improve, right? That was always going to happen. They were predictable in that way. The Raptors are probably moving somebody, right? That's probably happening. They're underachieving given their talent. It makes sense. There are predictable pieces to this. I have no idea what the Memphis Grizzlies are going to do, and that makes them a lot of fun to watch as we approach the trade deadline later this afternoon on this Thursday. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game-to-Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game-to-Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. We're going to close out the week next time we are together on Locked On Grizzlies, rehashing the craziness that was the NBA trade deadline. Were the Grizzlies active? Did they stand pat? Did they go all in? And we'll have a Minnesota Timberwolves game to talk about that just got a little bit more interesting. I'm guessing Mike Conley won't be cleared to participate in that contest. So the Timberwolves will be without D'Angelo Russell, still no Karl Anthony Towns, I believe. So an undermanned T-Wolves team. That'll be a good opportunity perhaps for a win, a sorely needed win. Don't get me wrong. When the Grizzlies are at the peak of their powers, I want the tough test. They got to be battle ready. Right now, I'm just ready for wins.
Take them how you get them, bro. Yeah.
So I'm excited for the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Hope you guys are too. Thank you so much to Damichael for joining me. It's so glad to have you back on the show. It's just better to have Damichael back. And thank you, wherever you are, for listening, for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, review, all those things. Continue to make us a part of your NBA fan experience, your Grizzlies experience. We're proud members of Locked On Podcast Network. You can find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And again, check us out on YouTube if you haven't already done so. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Until next time, stay locked in, Grizzlies fans. Happy trade deadline day. Enjoy yourselves. This is Locked On Grizzlies.